questions?
Francis, yesterday there was some time and attention given to the question, am I convinced? Convinced about the oneness of being, the oneness of consciousness. And I've been exploring that question myself. I've worked through the doctrine and the logic, and I find it compelling, certain, beautiful, true. And I've been there, but I don't live there. And I have to keep reminding myself of what's true. If I were convinced, would I have to keep reminding myself?
There is a distinction to be made between being convinced and having been convinced. Right?
Yes.
And certainly you have been convinced, we have been convinced, but sometimes we forgot our conviction. And but it's not really about reminding oneself constantly, I am universal consciousness. Rather, it is rather about forgetting the old habit of believing to be a separate and limited consciousness. In other words, not to have any opinion as to what we are is just perfect. You see?
Yes.
Because then what we are is, anyway, what it is, right? So that's why often you find these sages talking about not living in not knowing. It doesn't mean not knowing how to walk or not knowing how to speak a language. But not having definite answer to the question, what am I? Because there is no such an answer. The answer is in being itself, what we are, right? But if we bring a fake answer to the question, such as I am limited, then we kind of distort the landscape. You see, we prevent consciousness to show its true colors. Because as consciousness, you give the order to the universe to play a fictitious theatrical play. And then you will notice that as we lose these habits, we have long moments of being just natural. And the false representation we have of liberation, of the free state, is one of ecstasy, is one of a constant ecstatic state. Whereas in fact it's just a natural state, which is not the same. So the story, personal story that often tell to illustrate it, that I had been spending a month with my teacher in Switzerland, and towards the end of the stay, he said, well, sometimes you spend 3 weeks and you realize in hindsight, I've been happy. And as he said that, I thought, gee, that was the case. I had 3 weeks. It's like 3 weeks of Californian sky without a cloud in it. You know, I had 3 weeks without problem, without worries, without just enjoying whatever, enjoying the breakfast, enjoying the conversation, enjoying the wine, enjoying playing music, enjoying the landscape, the sleep, the chores, everything was fine. Not that I enjoy the chores, but it was fine. We were doing the chores every morning. Oh, it was complicated. We were doing yoga in the living room, so we had to move all the furniture out on the deck to have enough room to do so, and then bring the furniture back and then prepare breakfast. So it was a lot of chores. Yes, a lot of chores. But it was fun. So. Yeah, we have so it's important not to have this wrong impression of having smoked a huge spiritual joint. That's not what it is like.
But do you always feel benevolent indifference, or do you sometimes feel these contractions? Like, is your experience like as an embodied being? Are you transparent, luminous, and like without a center? Like, suppose someone flips you off on the highway, or you come back to your...
Oh, I get angry.
Like if you come back...
I tried to flip him off again.
But
I am a French driver. I'm not an American. With Italian blood, so don't.
Or like if you come back
don't mess
to
with Italy on the road.
If you come back to your parked car and someone parked too close and there's a dent, do you feel benevolent indifference?
When?
Like
there are many opportunities not to feel benevolent.
Do you feel contractions though?
Yeah, you can feel contractions. What's the problem?
But you don't identify with them. How does, like, if you're so impersonal, like, not you especially, but if we are impersonal consciousness, then things like that shouldn't bother us, right?
Should and shouldn't. Let me tell you something. If you are happy 99.99% of the time, right? And if you compare that to time in your life when you were in fact miserable 99.99% of the time, I mean, who cares about going up to 100%?
But it seems like these trivial, like paper cuts.
No, because what I hear that, it's, you find that in the traditions, that to see enlightenment as becoming a perfect. It's a stupid image of false perfection.
Yeah.
So the guru is not perfect, the sage is not perfect, because they are human. So this image of false perfection, and it happens usually when the guru is dead. So after the death of the guru, every 10 years, the guru gets a raise in perfection. You see? Every 10 years. So can you think after 2,000 years? I mean, you need binoculars to look up there at the guru. You see, I mean, Jesus, I'm sure he got angry with his students or his friends, if they played a trick on him, such as, giving his name to the Romans, or his whereabouts. It was not very nice. I could understand him being pissed off.
So the trick is not to get because these things happen like so often during the day, little annoyances. So how do you prevent from getting swept away into that world?
And get swept away. It's just a wave of energy to be enjoyed.
And then you come back to abiding in the self.
When you have a surfer, they are there, they look at the wave, and then when they see a big wave, they're happy, they try to catch it, right? So the Tantrika, it's the same. Any big wave of energy is worth surfing. Whether it's positive or negative, who cares? It's a wave. Enjoy the surf.
But then it's hard to stay as transparent, centered, and grounded when you're like, in that state of mind.
But you see, what is problematic with your question is that there is a hidden assumption that there is someone there to stay in a state. There is nobody in the first place to stay or not to stay in a state. There is only the illusion that there is somebody there to stay or not to stay in a state.
So it's just all part of consciousnessing, like you say?
It's all always and everywhere the universing or the cosmosing.
Okay.
Every time we believe that there is someone doing something, that there is a guru out there, that there is someone in here, that's the beginning of the problems. So the best thing to do, if you see a big anger coming in you, say, "Oh, wait, what a nice wave! Oh, you is the universe. Yes, this one you are. There is a huge build-up here." You see, why worry about that? Why worry about that? Why? You have to welcome it anyway.
Yeah, I think you're right, because we have this image of... sorry, that was kind of presumptuous, sorry. I mean, there's like this image, like when you're spiritual, you're always loving
Yeah, I have
and
news
kind.
for you. Krishna was not perfect.
Yeah, I know.
I may be iconoclastic for the Hindus, right? Yeah. But Krishna was not perfect.
Yeah. He was very mischievous.
He was made perfect after the fact. Yeah. That's... But that's not his fault. It's the Brahmin's fault.
Thank you.
And I'm not sure he was always perfectly in tune when he was playing his flute either. Now I have lost my Indian congregation.
Hi, Francis. You, when you were talking about your time spent in Switzerland and looking back on the 3 weeks or whatever it was, and you've used this expression a number of times in answering questions, what is the problem? And you look back on the time and realized you had been happy, and there were things you had to do that weren't excitingly pleasant, but where was the problem? And I've been asking myself that for some time, and not wanting to believe it's as simple as the only problem is that I believe in the problem. Is it that simple?
The problem is to believe in the one who is having a problem.
All right. All right. All right.
it doesn't mean that there are no problems, but then the only problems that remain are practical. What do I do?
Right, practical
I have
problems.
a problem with my car, I have a problem with my body, I take the appropriate steps.
Right,
I have a problem with my bank account, I have a problem with...
right. I perhaps should have said psychological problem.
Yes. Yes, all psychological problems are connected to this belief to be a person.
Mm-hmm.
So if we get rid of those already, it clarifies the situation a lot.
All right, so it always comes back to that.
Yeah,
All
because for the following reason, is that practical problems, there is always an end to those. There is always a solution, because they occur in time, and as time flows, at some point a solution takes place, right? The car becomes a lemon, so either we fix it, or at some point we have to change the car, right? So the problem of the car breaking down, at some point finds a solution, or we buy a bicycle. But there is, at some point, all the practical issues found a resolution, perhaps not on that we like, but whereas the psychological problem is very different because it runs in circle and there is never a solution, because the problem is the one having a problem. As long as the one is having a problem is there.
Right. All right. I think I see how it connects into something more fundamental, though. Yes. The fundamental mistaken belief.
Yeah,
Yes.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you.
Back to the pissed off wave part, the upset sage or what have you. Is that similar when I've heard you mention before the difference between, for example, freedom from versus freedom to?
No. No, I think one has to do with the 0.01% when we have a relapse into old habits, and also there are many cases also when it may look like anger or upset, whereas it's in fact outrage.
Yeah.
You see. And sometimes it can be also a mix of both. If someone has a behavior which is outrageous, we may feel this anger-like feeling, but then we understand that the vantage point of the other person and their ignorance and why they did what they did, and then I think the less importance we attribute to those outbursts, the less they occur. Because think about it, if I get angry because I am getting angry, how does that solve the problem? You see, I'm just continuing the thing. Whereas if I say, the universe just got angry through it, or got ignorant through this manifestation here, that's the end of it, right? You don't feel responsible, you don't feel angry at yourself, because there is nobody to feel angry at. If you want to feel, basically, in life, if we want to feel angry at someone, it should be at God. Yeah, because God can take it. You're right. God is not very indifferent if you get angry at God. Yeah. And because he or she did it, certainly, ultimately, that's always the case. So. I'm irreverent. But I think it's better to be an irreverent than a reverent. Another way to phrase it is, I'm religiously incorrect. Freedom is religiously incorrect, politically incorrect, culturally incorrect. Freedom is incorrect. Because it upsets those who are not free. And in this process, it gives them an inkling of freedom. But if you are free, why would you be upset by something someone says, right? If you are free. If someone tells you, Jesus wasn't born out of a virgin. You say, oh yes, why not? That makes sense. Even if you are a Catholic, you see what I mean? You say, I understand your position. You don't get upset.
This question's been sort of stirring around for a few months. I don't know how to ask it. It's kind of a weird question, a little bit weird. It seems to me like there's value in being in the presence of a sage. It seems like that's a good thing. And my question is about the intellect and what role the intellect plays in that value. And the way that it's come to me is, what if the sage that somehow we feel it's good to be around this person, what if they got dementia? What if they lost that? Would the value, it's almost like it's helpful, opening, clarity comes. Would that still be available without the intellect?
If you if you have a nice dog, you may enjoy the presence of a nice dog. I must say I enjoy more the presence of a very nice dog than of some human beings, right?
Sure. Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah.
So you can have satsang with a nice dog and enjoy the presence of a nice dog, and there is no much intellectual interaction. Or with a very, very young child. But of course, the form of communication we have among human beings, we miss it then. I could see that because I spent a few days with my teacher after his mind was gone due to a stroke. And it was not the same. I was really feeling like in charge of a child, one of almost a baby, you know. Yeah. I had to spoon feed him, to take him to the bathroom, so it's like a baby. And he didn't know who I was, really. He felt he knew me. He thought I was his first cousin. When that happens to people we love, it's a little bit like they die before they die. Mm-hmm. Because the person we have known,
Yes,
in a sense, is no longer there. It is and it isn't.
mm-hmm.
It is as a form, the form of the body, but it is no longer there. I could see I happened to have been around after my teacher passed away, and I paid a visit because I was traveling from Northern California to Los Angeles, and he was in Santa Barbara, and so I passed by in Santa Barbara. And his body was, the same I knew. But he was not there. So when he had his dementia, it was the same, the body was the same, it was moving, mm-hmm. but something was missing that was there before. If we want to feel what it is like to be demented, each of us has his experience, Because every night we are demented in our dreams. So it's very... we have forgotten everything from the waking state, right? We are in total dementia. So it's not an experience which is foreign to us. We have it every night. And we don't complain about it. It is what it is.
I guess my question was about that ineffable thing, whatever I don't know how to talk about it, but
this ineffable thing at some point stops to a very large extent being transmitted when the body passes away.
Mm-hmm.
So this light perhaps gets dimmed before it is switched off.
mm-hmm. The Tibetans have a thing about this, that when the guru dies, they're more available briefly for a while. The story.
I don't know about all of these stories.
I don't
either. I think every time we want to make general rules, I'm a little allergic to that.
Yeah.
You see, because it doesn't give enough slack to God. You see, we try to make rules about God, to catch God within the rule book
right.
of man.
The human rule book.
God is like this and behaves like this, and well, God is free, I have news for you, and can surprise us. So perhaps yes, perhaps no, who cares?
Yeah, okay, perfect. Thank you.
I think, God is free and expresses herself through where she wants, when she wants, and how she wants. Through whatever public address system she chooses to use at that moment. There is something that a question that, and it may have been the question behind your question,
Okay.
but that truth seeker have, which is this: once I get a glimpse of truth, can I lose it? Can I lose the state? Due to illness, due to... due to dementia. And that's a wrong question, because that's a very ignorant way to ask the question, because this question is based upon the assumption that I am a human body, and that I am, as a human body, I am going to lose the light. Whereas in fact, the understanding is I am the light, I am not the human body. So I'm going to lose the human body, that's for certain, but I'm never going to lose myself, you see. So this question is based upon, comes from ignorance, in a sense, a residue of ignorance. It's the same thing as the question according to which there are sages. You know, Atmananda Krishna Menon, he used to say, there is only one sage. There are not many sages, there is only one sage. The word sage, just as the word Atman, doesn't have a plural, really. And regarding the sage losing the experience of itself, the only possibility for that to happen is if consciousness chooses to do so. And it is always a seeming, never a real losing. So, from the vantage point of God, it's only a game being played. But this misunderstanding that enlightenment is something that a separate individual is going to achieve, you see, is going to hold and is going to keep or not keep. Doesn't make sense.
I've asked this question before, but this is through writing, and I'm going to ask it again. So, with the yoga exercises and stuff, you can see yourself as the witness of the body sensations, of the objects, of thought, etc. But then as reality, I'm also the creator. How do I experientially see that? Because that doesn't flow from witness to...
Okay, I can try to give you a hint. Usually we have no objection to the understanding that we create our thoughts, that they are our thoughts, right? That we own our thoughts, and they are my creation, they are mine. But if we look carefully at the way they happen, we realize that they are unpredictable, and that they are not essentially different from a hurricane, because we don't choose them any more than we chose a meteorological event. So both a meteorological event and a thought are in fact cosmic events. Therefore, whoever creates a hurricane creates the thought, and conversely. So, if we agree with the experience, I create my thoughts, we have to be open to the possibility that the same I who creates the thought also creates a hurricane, because my thoughts are cosmic events. we do that naturally, this self-attribution of the creation of thoughts. In the case of thoughts, we do that naturally, we have no objection. But once we understand that it is the same source that creates the thoughts and the events in the world, it's just that culturally we are not used to seeing things that way. That's because we identify with the body, and instead of seeing the body as an instrument of creation, and the mind also as an instrument, we see them as the creator.
You know, about the thought creation, valid point. But experientially, I am the witness, right? Because that is what I experience.
Yes, but then that's okay. I am just the witness of my thoughts. I'm not the creator of my thoughts. Then you are the witness of your thoughts, and you are the witness of events in the world. But disown your thoughts in that case completely.
Yeah. Then does this imply an inference where you say, okay, I have this intuition that I am the creator of thought, and since thought and the hurricane are both cosmic events, then I'm the creator of the cosmic event?
Yeah. Let me tell you something else also. In this restaurant, you are both the chef and the customer. And you change hats. And it's not good as a customer in a restaurant to be in the kitchen. You know? And especially if you criticize the chef. Never do that. But so you want the food to be well prepared and served on a very nice table with silverware and nice china, right? By someone who is well dressed, and on a silver plate, right? You don't want in the kitchen with the guy and sauce going everywhere. No. So it's the same here. We manufacture the thing and then we serve it. In other words, for instance, there are many creations that are of which we are not the witness during the creation, but we are the witness after the fact that they have been created. We are not the witness of our digestion, for instance, in most cases. In most cases, right? It goes on off our immunitary system. It gets triggered on its own, but nevertheless, it happens. But I have a more convincing example, and which is an event that happens in the dream state. An event like someone comes and all of a sudden tells you, "Oh, you know what? You just lost all your money, right? You are bankrupt." And now, as it happens as a big surprise, right? You weren't expecting. Yeah. But in fact, in hindsight, you were manufacturing it, right? Yeah. So you were both the creator of the event and the witness of it.
Yeah. So it's just this little reluctance to accept it, because then am I just putting on another belief?
Yeah, I think it originates from the fact that what we usually call creation is something we manufacture, meaning with a hand. So that's what it means to manufacture, with the body. So there is this kind of notion that creation is something which is created by a body. That is not true, actually, of intellectual creation. And the creativity in intellectual creation is not even of the mind. It comes from a different place, right? It comes from the realm of ideas or whatever, but it comes from a different place.
Actually, I think for me it's the opposite in the sense, it seems magical. Creating this seems magic.
Yeah?
And then I'm now attributing that to me consciousness.
It's very obvious when you have a creative idea that it comes from consciousness. Where else could it come from?
Yeah, I guess it's more the universe.
Yes, but the universe comes from an overarching reality.
But I am that reality.
And since consciousness is, as we saw yesterday, a reality, and since there is this conclusion that there is only one reality, then that which creates and that which witnesses is the same. Just, we have an objection that comes from an erroneous representation we have of what creation entails. That creation is an activity of the body, and that the body creates. See the body as an instrument at the service of whatever it is that creates. And because it is true, the body in and by itself doesn't create a work of art. It's just an instrument. So then you'll be open to the possibilities that which creates and that which witnesses are the same.
Yeah. And if it creates something like a painting, then be open to the possibility that it can create something more magnificent, like the universe.
Yeah, it creates through this human body mind instrument, whatever this human body mind instrument seems to be creating. But just as a typewriter doesn't create the novel. So if we investigate deeply what is it that creates, we will find consciousness at the origin, or reality. If we look at the world as a creation, we find reality. If we look at any human creation, we find consciousness. Yeah. But it is the same reality creating through this human body instrument. And the creation through this human body instrument is part of the universal creation. That includes all the creation through all the human and animal body instrument, but also through the atoms, electrons,
laws of nature, yeah.
Big bangs, black holes, and whatever.
Yeah. Thank you.
Francis, yesterday you were mentioning responding to a question regarding free will, and somebody asked if we're free, do we have free will, or freedom to choose what we can choose, or do things just happen? And your answer, your typical answer, the Lucille answer as I call it, is we have good news and bad news. But my question is regarding the good news, regarding how self-awareness is free. The ultimate reality is what is really free. Is that different from free will, freedom versus the freedom to make choices? Because I'm sort of asking the question from the discussion which we just had regarding the creation of the universe,
Yes,
and things that arise.
It's more than the freedom to make choices, because the freedom to make choices is like we go to Walmart and we have for the product we want to purchase, we have various options, all made in China. And some of them, it's just the packaging which is different, but the product is the same. But nevertheless, so the various options are there, and whereas there is another way of freedom, which is when you start from nothing and you create what you want. It's artistic freedom. The freedom of the artist is different. The artist, in its creative process, which is the exercise of his freedom, doesn't come from predefined choices necessarily. It can start from a blank canvas or whatever, or not even a canvas, from nothing, and say, okay, I'm going to do something. You see? So the freedom of consciousness is more like that. So it's not a choice between predetermined possibility, but it's absolute, infinite possibility.
Would you say that it's a difference between a process versus something instant?
Also.
Mm-hmm.
But instant, the real world will be timeless, because everything in this moment is such a choice coming from this timelessness. So time gets created out of this timelessness.
So the fact that, so in a certain sense, the lack of control that we're trying to free ourselves from is also freedom, a sense of
yes, because the moment the separate entity we believe to be is allegedly endowed with free will. It is the free will that creates and enables the individual doer, because the real doer is a decider, right? The decider of the deed. The rest is just an instrument to do the deed. So the decision is that which is important, the chooser, the decider, the willer of the deed. So the moment we realize that we don't choose our thoughts, and therefore we don't choose our decision, the separate wheeler goes down the drain. That's not sufficient for liberation because there is still the possibility of a separate witness, of the separate perceiver. So this one has to go down the drain also as an option. That's why a teaching which is correct, in which the non-existence of a doer, of a separate doer, is demonstrated, it's correct, but it's not sufficient. Because we need to understand the non-existence of a separate wheeler, but also the non-existence of a separate perceiver. And since there is obviously a perceiver, we have to question the separation of this perceiver and its limitation. Of course, it's from our inner experience, it's obvious that the wheeler and the perceiver are one. The alleged wheeler and the alleged perceiver, right? We don't have a split personality so that we move from one who makes the decision and another one who observes the outcome of those decisions, right? It is the same in our experience. So we have to be open to the possibility that the wheeler and the witness are universal and not limited. That it is God that, in fact, wills and decides and observes through our body-minds. And it's magical. It's because the sense of guilt goes down the drain, and the sense I can do something wrong, and the sense, the fear, what's going to happen, all of that collapses. And what is left is just this revelation, the call it celebration, but also proper qualification would be a revelation, an ongoing revelation.
Thank you, Francis.
This revelation that all is divine, all is that's the Rumi said about Shams Tabrizi. Shams has never looked at something mortal without making it eternal. Meaning, he has never seen things as things. He was seeing things as God. So it's and not hypothetically, not theoretically, but right here, right now. You see, right here, right now. That's not postponing it. Not say tomorrow I will see everything as God, or it's a good idea. Let me think about it. I do that later, because then you postpone the experience, the liberation. And in fact, no, it doesn't change anything a priori, but it changes also everything. In other words, it's not that if you see everything as God, that all of a sudden, like in these movies, in the Matrix, you see everything, changing. No, it remains the same, but at the same time, a new perfume comes into existence. That's going to take a few questions from our friends online.
Francis, if I may, can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm beginning to see life as a play between consciousness and ignorance, where ignorance is acting as a villain.
Where ignorance?
Is acting as a villain. So I'm beginning to map out life, and if I was to define it simply, it seems to me a play between ignorance and consciousness, where ignorance is acting as a villain. But it also seems that ignorance is almost a necessary evil that allows me to come to the realization of being consciousness through its investigation.
Yes, but you are way too harsh with.
I tell her that all the time.
Way too harsh with ignorance. It's more like a game. It's a game. So ignorance is the bad guy in the game. So we are playing cops and robbers, right? But ultimately, the guy who is playing the robber is a friend. Because it is consciousness who is playing the part of ignorance also. So that's very important. Because then you don't see people in ignorance. You see consciousness in people playing this game. So it's very different, because then you're not judgmental about people. There are no people. So it's only consciousness, and you tell consciousness, what are you doing there? What do you think you're doing? You see, it's very different. Because if you see people there, it means you see people here, and that's the problem. Because if you see someone here, ignorance is here. You see already. So we have to see ignorance for what it is. It is consciousness playing a game. So it becomes more friendly. What are you doing playing these games with this person there? I caught you. I saw you. It's different. It's different. It's not as I often mention that my teacher, when someone was misbehaving, he wouldn't say, "You're stupid." He wouldn't even say, "This deed was stupid," which is a better form, right? "You're nice, but this deed was stupid," right? No, he would say, "That was not like you." Which is beautiful, because he was pointing at the consciousness, which is perfect, and he was saying basically, beautiful consciousness, why did you do that? What came through your mind, Are you crazy or what? You divine being, what are you doing? I see. So And because as long as we see that as a fight, a manichaeism, between good and evil, we have plenty of that, in the Bible. So it's boring. It leads to war, to all kinds of bad things. We have to see the innocence in everyone, and also in ignorance. All human beings are innocent, ultimately. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't put some people behind bars, or in mental institutions. Yes, of course, we should. Mankind has a right to protect itself, yes. But
Thank you.
Connie. Okay, good. Connie, it was not a question. Luciana. Many things have happened since the retreat. I now can see the obstacle in holding expectations, and I am better at welcoming and letting go of expectations and beliefs. And the residual sensations are appearing less and less. I want you to know that I've never stopped trusting Advaita. In the first words I listened, spoken through Francis and Klein, I only heard divinity, and this has never changed. Any doubt I pretended to have was just a call for some attention. Why then was I so shy and nervous in your presence? And why do I still feel unsettled when I ask you questions and wait for your answer? Is it again all down to the belief in separation? The journey after the glimpse in our relation to the Guru is a road to friendship. And what gets revealed through this instrument called a human guru is so momentous, so majestic, that it commands a great respect. And the relationship with the Guru is one in which we relate, on one hand, to a human being, and on the other hand, somehow to consciousness. The Guru is like a point of entry to what relationships between human beings ought to be. as we travel, so this example of relationship we have with the Guru, the homework is to have it first with our fellow truth seekers, because that's easy there, but then potentially with all of mankind. As we journey on this path, as we get more and more established in this type of connection with the world and the people in it, concomitantly, we can observe that our connection with the Guru moves towards friendship. Ultimately, all beings are the Guru. All beings are our friends. And ultimately, at the end, the relationships are ordinary friendship, but at the same time extraordinary because consciousness is everywhere. So that's why I said in my answer that the journey is from a relationship with great respect for the divine in the Guru to one in which it becomes more ordinary, more the friend, but at that moment we have the same connection with all beings, potentially our friends. Doesn't work always like that, but potentially this openness should be there. Luciana says also, in my yesterday's question, which I have forgotten, of course, I was not complaining about words, nor anything else for that matter. Mine was just a remark about the difference between two very happy experiences. But maybe eventually living the cosmic dream will be recognizable as peace in the presence of objects. I don't know, but I need to remember that what I understood will never leave me, and what I have yet to understand will come to me when it's the right time, like it has always done before, right? She says, so I will not ask any more such questions. Do you also agree it's best? No, I think I agree with whenever you have a question, just ask it. Michael, can one live in ignorance and temporarily disidentify from the body-mind? Conversely, and the answer is yes. In other words, there can be moment of true love or true beauty and true intelligence in the experience of human beings who are not truth seekers and truth lovers. Conversely, can one be realized and temporarily lapse into identification with the body-mind? Yes. Some old habit may come out of the woodwork. And however, such a reoccurrence at the level of thought or feeling can never shake the ultimate peace of the background. If so, what would be the most intelligent response to both either situation? regarding the first question, can one live in ignorance and temporarily disidentify from the body-mind? There are moments of suspension of belief. Ignorance is the belief that we are a separate entity, a separate consciousness. And there are moments when this belief to be separate gets suspended. Suspended means it has not been really eradicated, eliminated, but for the time being, the current thought, the current feeling is not affected by this belief. So the action or the thought that comes in this moment will be very appropriate, will be impersonal. What a glimpse of our true nature does is that it really destroys at its very core the belief that consciousness is limited and separate. This destruction at the very core then filters through the mind, which is still structured along the old perspective of separation. So it filters more or less through the mind, but over time, from the center, everything collapses, everything melts. All this structure of the mind collapses and melts, and at some point, the light from within comes to the surface. That's why a glimpse may have happened, and the surface of the mind, the periphery of it, may seem not to have been affected. But deep inside, a revolution has taken place. Deep inside, the big dictator has been killed. It's just that the guards and the military and the police in the country have not heard the news yet. So they keep misbehaving for a while. Carl says, so to be clear about yesterday question. So to be clear, is the sole difference between freedom and illusory freedom impersonal intention or activity? I don't really understand the question, because the difference between freedom and illusory freedom is that illusory freedom is no freedom at all. So that's what I would say. So the difference between freedom and illusory freedom is no freedom. Freedom is for consciousness. Illusory freedom is for an illusory, separate consciousness which doesn't exist. The action or the intention that comes from the belief to be a separate consciousness is not free, is not. Whereas the action or decision that arises in the absence of such a belief, just in the absence of such a belief, is free. In other words, we don't need to believe to be impersonal consciousness or universal consciousness. all we need to do is to disbelieve being a separate consciousness, and then there is freedom. That's the only prerequisite for freedom, is this disbelief. But this disbelief has to be genuine. It has to be an absolute doubt, a doubt which is overwhelming. In other words, in which we really don't know. I don't know that I am a separate consciousness. I don't have the slightest clue about what I am regarding the separation or not.
Francis?
Total absence of bias. Yes.
May I ask
Go
a
ahead,
question?
go ahead.
Is there a choice involved in abiding in the peace of...
Say that again.
I'm sorry. Okay, gotta put my glasses on. Is there a choice involved in abiding in the peace of awareness, or is it rather a being drawn to, as if falling in love?
Who is abiding in this? So if you don't know what you are abiding in peace. You see, that's my answer. It's perfect. I don't know who I am, then you are in peace. To abide in peace is identical with not knowing what I am. The problem is not that I don't know what I am, it's that I believe I know.
Yes.
You see? So, and that's the peace pooper. The peace pooper is when I know what I am. So, but this not knowing what I am, as I was saying, has to be really, we have to say yes to it. We have to, it's a product of an investigation, of a discovery. You know, this not knowing is very important. And the problem is that the mind wants to know. We always want to know. And you come here and you say, no, it's not good to know. What is good is really not to know.
But is there even a choice in that?
What?
Is there even a choice in that, what you're suggesting?
Oh, there is a choice. You may decide to investigate or not investigate. That's your freedom. It's a free country. I mean, people can play tennis if they want to play tennis. They can eat garlic and onion if they want to, which is disgusting in my view.
Can I ask who's making the choice? May I ask who's making the choice?
Any choice about what?
About investigating, inquiring.
Yeah, you can go fishing.
Okay.
You can go shopping. You can. I mean, we have to be interested.
Mm-hmm.
But when we are interested in something, it feels like we are choosing it, right?
Right.
It doesn't feel that it is imposed upon us. When we are interested, interest is deeply connected with freedom.
With
right?
what?
With freedom.
Okay.
Interest and freedom, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we are interested in something, we are not under the impression that there is someone with a gun on our head telling us, do this. No. We are interested, we feel free, right? So freedom and interest are deeply connected, and the reason is that interest is, in fact, there is another name for interest, which is love. And love and freedom are deeply connected. There is no freedom without love. There is no love without freedom. You see? So as I said, we have to respect this freedom in all beings. There is the freedom of ignorance, the freedom not to investigate, the freedom to believe to be separate. And there is a freedom to investigate, and there is a freedom to question this separation. And once we begin this investigation, this questioning, the beauty is that the end of the road of this questioning is not the determination that consciousness is universal. There is a much lower threshold to achieve, which is the absolute conviction that I don't know. That's sufficient. But it has to be a true not knowing. I don't know. I have no clue whatsoever. And I'm 100% certain that I have no clue. You see, that's very important. Because then that gives us the possibility to give the other possibility a chance. You see, and to conduct experiments. And because if I don't know what consciousness is, if I don't choose to believe that it is limited, then I give consciousness the freedom to be whatever it is and to reveal itself. If, as consciousness, I choose to believe that I am limited, I am depriving myself from this freedom, from this revelation. Because I'm kind of giving the universe the order to manifest as if I were a limited consciousness, at least in this incarnation. So, this not knowing is extremely important. And you find it in all the mystics. You know, there is this Christian thing, the cloud of unknowing, this book. You find that in the Zen tradition also, you know.
Thank you.
I remember a long time ago, I was in LA and friends took me to a Korean teacher, Zen teacher in LA. Some of you may have met him. And the guy was not speaking too much English. But he had two words, don't know. So, it was very Zen. No.
J'ai un peu plus que 2 mots dans mon vocabulaire, mais je peux poser la question en français. Ok. Par rapport à ce que tu disais tout à l'heure, quand tu as rencontré Jean Klein quelques années avant la réalisation de la conscience universelle.
In reference to what you were saying before, when you met John Klein a few years before the revelation of universal consciousness, that's already not my experience, but okay. C'est pas mon expérience. Mais continue.
Ok, tu disais que la relation avait changé ensuite, enfin, quand tu répondais à la personne tout à l'heure.
You were saying that the relationship had changed over time.
Et que c'était devenu une relation plus de friendship, enfin d'amis.
Mm-hmm.
C'est un changement.
And that it had become more of a friendship.
C'est un changement qui est advenu tout seul, ou c'est ton comportement qui a changé par rapport à lui, ou c'est son comportement qui a changé par rapport à toi?
Is it you who have changed, or is it he who has changed his behavior towards you? I think it's both, because the teacher is is kind of a mirror, and there is a Taoist text. It's either by Chuang Tzu or by Li Tzu, one of these two. And he says, in the beginning, when I was attending my teacher's satsangs, my teacher didn't even look at me. Then, after several years, he would look at me. And after several more years, he invited me to sit next to, on his tatami or whatever, on his on his rug. So that's so of course, tu as compris ce que j'ai dit? Of course, there was a change in the student, but there was a change also in the teacher, since he invited him. And also, regarding the relationship between teacher and students, there is not a one-size-fits-all type. It's not like underwear. There is not a one-size-fits all. Every case is different. I remember after my first meeting with my teacher, the thought that came was, I would like him to become my friend. But then when with the revelations of that, the majesty of that which was behind the human teacher, that which was expressing itself through the human teacher, then that commanded in me infinite respect. So I was of two minds in his presence, both a friend and also like someone who enters a church or a temple.
Parfois, par rapport à ce respect, j'ai l'impression d'avoir trop de respect peut-être, ou enfin beaucoup de respect par rapport à ce que tu représentes. Et ça m'empêche parfois de poser des questions ou d'être plus spontané, en fait. Je perds la spontanéité. C'est comme si j'avais un peu trop de respect ou je sais pas, quelque chose comme ça.
He said, perhaps I have too much respect for what you represent and it prevents me from being spontaneous and asking some questions.
J'ai une petite voix dans la tête qui dit là tu peux poser une question, pas ça, ceci, cela, tu sais. Je sais pas quoi faire avec cette voix, en fait, parfois, et parfois c'est plus naturel.
I have a small voice in my head that says, why are you asking this question? Don't ask this question, etc. Yeah, but you have to be simple, you know. If you have a question, ask a question. I'm not going to slap you with. I'm not into Zen, so don't worry.
It's a chance.
There's no danger. And besides, you're bigger than me and younger. Okay, thank you.
Francis talked about freedom, and Talent Night Thursday is an excellent way both to demonstrate your freedom and to enjoy